Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Day 3 Content PAX. I'm slightly less tired than I was yesterday. I recorded yesterday's and I was completely shot, but it's been a little bit of a lighter day today, so it's been a little bit less ridiculous, which is always nice. We'll tell you about what I saw and what is coming. There is one final day of PAX to do, which may very well be like the time when we don't have as many appointments on that day, so there'll be stuff like us trying to get Titanfall, for instance. We've been hitting them the past 2 days for like, can we get a media appointment for that? Can we get a media appointment for this? Like, no, stand in the line. It's like, I can tell you for a fact that Cessla did not stand in that line, but whatever the case, Cesla's been around for, 75 more years than me, so it's understandable. Anyway, the final day will most likely be a bunch of kind of random stuff of what we can get at the time, as well as some of the stuff we had to reschedule due to production problems. We actually had one booking today that I believe was Dragon Fantasy Book Part 2, which is a rather tongue-in-cheek, old-school Final Fantasy-style RPG, the Part 1 of which is already available on PlayStation 3, by the way. Their stuff got locked in the hotel room because their hotel was on fire, so they had a MacBook, a tiny little MacBook and Macs don't run fraps, unfortunately, and it didn't have an HDMI output, it had some Thunderbolt port or something like that. I don't know, some crazy Mac arcane tech that I don't quite understand. So that didn't work out so well. We've had a couple of appointments every day where we've just not quite been able to do things, which has been kind of annoying, but we will do our best in that respect. The other games that were included in that were Hotline Miami 2, which was definitely a disappointment, but they have told me I'm getting a build for Hotline Miami 2 very, very soon. I played Hotline Miami 2. It plays quite similar to the original. The soundtrack seems to be... They actually seem to have improved the soundtrack even more, which is amazing. Like, the soundtrack they were pumping through the booth was awesome. Like, the whole lot was really, really cool. They had me playing on a giant TV so everyone could see me, which was terrible, but also great. Like, every time I did something awesome, it was like, yay! And every time I did something bad, it's like, yeah! And it was mostly the bad stuff. But, yeah, it very much plays the way that you would expect Hotline Miami to. What I did notice, I think they may have toned down that shaking effect, because I played for a good 15 minutes, and I had no problems whatsoever with the whole motion sickness thing that I had in the original. So it seems like that might have been resolved. Aside from that, it's Hotline Miami. I will see later on, once I get a hold of the build, what's exactly changed. The stuff that I saw in the demo, that wasn't so difficult to find out. Another one that we didn't get filming of, but we are getting a build of, was Always Sometimes Monsters, which is another... It looks like an old RPG. It looks like a SNES RPG, but it's actually more of a game that is based around a lot of very serious choices, and those choices having a major impact. The way they set the demo up is the demo could end in one of 4 kind of equally horrific ways. So I got to play that for a good 30-35 minutes, and that was actually kind of compelling. The writing was pretty good. There was some really cool choices. There was some decent humor in it, and there was some really strange, mysterious stuff going on. So I'm intrigued to see how that one turns out. It's definitely not going to impress people that are looking for graphical fidelity, because that's not what that game is about, but it looks intriguing. It's got a lot of choices, a lot of consequences, definitely an adult storyline. Some of the dialogue's a little bit cringy in the sake of it's like almost like they swore for the sake of swearing, which I'm not so keen on. But they've got some good stuff in there, so yeah, it was pretty cool. Again, didn't get to film that because of production issues here and there. But I think the rest of it we did. So what did we start off with? That is a great question. I could definitely tell you. I just have to have a quick look at my calendar, if you don't mind. We've covered so many games throughout this entire thing that it's actually really difficult to keep track. So let's have a look and see what we got. We actually did quite a lot of interviews today, and that's mostly because we had a lot of time with the Warner Brothers guys, which resulted in some rather cool stuff regarding Batman and the new Scribblenauts, and there was some cool stuff going on there. We did Bionic Dues, which is a strange one. That's by Arkan. Arkan have done numerous games, including Skyward Collapse, as well as AI War, Tidalus, a couple of other things as well. Haven't really covered much of this stuff. I keep telling people buy AI War, and I do mean that very much because it's a really unique game. Bionic Dues is a roguelike involving a team of mechs, and they described it as a mixture of Dungeons & Dreadmore with Atom Zombie Smasher, which means that everything you're doing is kind of in a city, and everything's on a timer. So the more successful you are in a mission, the more kind of holds back the inevitable apocalypse, which will eventually happen in 50... It happens in, 50 days, and each time you play through a mission, that's 1 day. You have a team of mechs that you can get loot for, you can upgrade and things like that. You can switch between the mechs on the fly, and it works like an old-school roguelike. That is, when you take a turn, everyone else takes a turn. So it is a traditional roguelike in that respect. It's really interesting. I like the graphic style a lot. Reminded me quite a bit of Sword of the Stars, The Pit in that respect. So I was pretty much digging that. The combat's pretty solid. You can die very, very quickly if you don't do things right. And there's a good amount of procedural generation in there as well. Very much an alpha build. Definitely not ready, but I got some good footage of that, and it was pretty cool. Like, for a roguelike game, it definitely had some interesting elements to it. And it was a solid, probably one of the easiest games to get into from Archon that I've actually seen in a while, which is pretty cool. Dead State. I played Dead State. Okay, I'm going to disclaim this footage by saying, like, their build that they have running right now is really slow. Like, they are running a pre-alpha. The frame rate is awful. Like, we're talking about 10 frames a second. What it is, though, which many of you are aware of because maybe you backed it on Kickstarter, is Double Bear's attempt to do a zombie survival RPG of sorts. Yeah, and it's top-down isometric for the most part. Combat system is turn-based, based on action points, are very XCOM-like. Your different weapons have different attacks. It's got some interesting mechanics. The first one of which in combat is a sound meter, and zombies in that game are very much attracted by sound, which means that the more sound you make, the more commotion there is, the more likely you are to attract zombies. You can bring extra zombies in, or there might be zombies on the map that just ignored you until you started making noise. That means that firearms make a huge amount of noise, which is a massive, massive downside. And you aren't the only one that does that, because there are other factions like looters and bandits, and they can fight the zombies, but they'll also be going after you as well. So we had some really interesting situations involving that. So that was good. And they also have some management aspects, like you can upgrade you're basically based out of a school, right? And you can upgrade that school with fortifications. You pick who you bring on missions, and then every day the characters will come to you with different tasks and concerns and things like that. So, yeah, it seems pretty legit. I'd say it's really ropey right now. They've got to work on it. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of that. The UI definitely needs a lot of changes because there's a lot of quality of life stuff there that just doesn't exist, and it can be really fiddly, but it's looking promising once they've got that stuff nailed down. I played the Banner Saga, single player, not the multiplayer. I know you guys played factions, that's not new information. I played the single player, and it was awesome. I got cutscenes, I got animation, I got to learn a little bit about how the actual party system works, and in the sense that you gather this village to you, and you gather supplies for the village. Played a lot of different combat against AI, which I've got to say is way better than playing it in multiplayer. I don't really like factions that much because it drags on too much. This time around, because you've got more of an asymmetric combat against AI, the pacing is a lot better and it's a lot more satisfying. And I'm still blown away by the quality of the animation in that game. It's just mind-bogglingly crazy, especially considering there's so few people actually working on it. It's nuts. It's really, really cool. I recorded the entire PAX demo, so you will get to see all of the Mana Saga that is currently available. So I'm hoping you will enjoy that very, very much. All right, let's see what else we did. Okay, we had a look at Warner Brothers stuff. Yes, indeed. Warner Brothers let us see Batman Arkham Origins, Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate, which is the handheld version, that's Vita and 3DS, and they also let us see Scribblenauts Unmasked. I went to town on Scribblenauts Unmasked, as you know. Unfortunately, we couldn't film that stuff, that's just the way of it, but what we did manage to do, we agreed with the dev, if we do an interview, we'd have one of the devs playing the game in the background doing crazy stuff, so that actually got in the shot, and I think you'll find that rather amusing. We also introduced my hero that I invented, which is Skate Thulu, who is exactly as awesome as he sounds. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on with Scribblenauts. It's like, it's less of a huge jump between Scribblenauts Unlimited and Scribblenauts Unmasked, as opposed to Scribblenauts versus Scribblenauts Unlimited. Yeah, that's where it kind of really unchained itself and went crazy and got really good. It's just like a really much better Scribblenauts now with a way more stuff you can do, and that's cool. I like that a lot. The hero editor is really robust. They're promising full Steam Workshop support again. They were very, very happy about the reception of the PC version. They are promising, this is a cool thing, and this is something I found out in the interview, you'll find out a lot more about the game in the interview when it comes up later this week, that they will be releasing the English version worldwide on PC at the same time. That was a problem with Scribblenauts Unlimited because they held it back for localization. PC version, English version will be available everywhere at the same time. That's what they said. So that's really, really cool. Obviously, if you're looking for a foreign language, you're probably going to have to wait because that game has a very unique problem in the sense that localization is vitally important there, but they have listened to fans, which is great. 2 Batman games. I will give you full impressions of both in one video, probably. I won't do separate because that's a little bit silly, but Origins is really interesting in the sense that they have a brand new detective mode, which is very cool. It's actually like the dream remixing kind of mechanic to some degree in Remember Me. and it's way more in-depth and really interesting. I like it a lot. Combat system's got a few new features, including a remote hook, which allows you to hook something to something else. So yes, I hooked explosive barrels to enemies and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same origins, same Batman that everyone kind of knows. Very much the style of Arkham City as opposed to Arkham Asylum. So very open world, but you do get to fly around Gotham this time, which I think is a much cooler venue than Arkham City. There's a bunch of stuff like crimes going on that you can go and solve and all sorts of things like that. And I played Blackgate, which was also pretty cool. Funnily enough, Blackgate's actually more like Asylum than anything else. It's more like Arkham Asylum, because it's a little bit more linear, a little bit more Metroidvania. And I did an interview with those guys, and he had some cool ideas, I gotta say, because obviously they had to work in parallel with the existing one, but they wanted to make a different game. And they actually did a solid job of it. I played the Vita version. I was pretty happy with it. Frame rate needs to be tweaked a little bit. Texture quality was what you would really expect from a handheld game, but I think they took the license and actually did something legitimately good with it. So I'm hoping that the rest of the game kind of lives up to what I saw, and I'll talk about that more in depth in my impressions. So yeah, 2 interviews and the impressions of all of those games coming in your general direction over the next few days. As we've said before, those games that do not allow capture, we will be doing my impressions over Be Real and stuff like that. So, because that's what you guys asked for. So, yeah, that's what we'll be doing. All right, other Devolver stuff. I saw a game called Foul Play. Foul Play is hilarious. It is the most British of games. It is a brawler involving a British explorer and his sidekick, and they're putting on a play, and all of the brawling happens on a stage. You don't have a health bar, which is really weird. What you're trying to do is impress the crowd with your antics, and it's awesome, and the dialogue's hilarious, and the developers are super British, and it's great. It's really good. It's coming out on Steam and Xbox 360, and I got loads of capture of it, so I'll be showing you a bunch of that. I also played Necro, and yes, I did the mission with Mayor Biscuit. Yes, Mayor Biscuit, I think I got him buffed because I think he murdered me horribly. But yeah, Necro is finally playable, and it's cool. It's got a few things that I want them to kind of figure out. Like, I still think that the Necro's combat is a little bit weaker than it needs to be. I think they've got to either put more variety of moves in there, or they've just got to make the combat a little bit more satisfying. It's a little bit spammy, but the actual RTS element and the summoning element is right up my alley. It's exactly what I hoped. It's this amazing mixture of a kind of Dungeon Keeper-esque art style with a little bit of Overlord, a little bit of Sacrifice thrown in there, and a little bit of Diablo. I like it a lot. The art style is incredible. The animation quality is just off the charts. It's exactly what I was hoping for when I saw their Kickstarter. They seem to have come through in fine style. They've got some great ideas. There's a lot of customization you can do in terms of each of your summons, all sorts of different abilities that you can equip, as well as artifacts and trinkets and stuff like that. It is looking good. I'm really, really happy, and that's a game obviously I supported with my Kickstarter video a while ago, so I'm really happy that it turned out well. Now, we did have an appointment with Strife. Unfortunately, we ran late and weren't able to do it. We will be doing Strife on Monday. We've rebooked that. So that's S2's new Dota-style game. Those are the guys that made Heroes of New Earth, so we'll be checking that out. And my last appointment was with XCOM. Really in-depth interview and a big hands-on session. Yep. Again, hands-on, same deal. We can't capture direct footage. We'll show you some B-reel, and I'll talk in-depth about what I saw. I saw a lot. I played a big map. I used a lot of Gene Mod troopers. I used a lot of mech trooper stuff. I encountered one of the new enemy types, the second one, which has just been announced, the Seeker. That wasn't in there. Played with a bunch of new abilities like needle grenades, gas grenades, flashbangs. I also had a bunch of new options available to me because of those Gene mods. And you know what really struck me about it? The enemy behavior's changed around a bit. Like, enemies that can't take cover, like the Mechtoids, now have the option to go into Overwatch as soon as they're discovered, which is really unusual, and it actually changes the dynamic of discovering a pack of aliens completely. They don't just necessarily run to cover, they might actually stand and activate an Overwatch, which can mean that shots actually come from the shadows, which is interesting and something that I think a lot of people will really like. They described a lot of really cool options for second wave as well. That's all covered in the interview. I think you're going to be pretty excited about that. I was impressed. Like, they've rebalanced a lot of it. The combat just feels a little bit better, and there's a little bit more of a timer on it because you're trying to acquire this meld resource as well. So, yeah, there's some legitimate stuff going on there. I talked to the guy in depth. We talked about a lot of stuff. We mostly focused on the tactical side of things instead of the strategy part. They're talking about that later, so they weren't really wanting to talk about that. But we did go really in depth on the way that the combat now works, and there's way more changes than you thought, and way more changes than I thought as well. Like, it is kind of the gods and kings rebalancing by the looks of it that we were hoping for. Obviously, we don't know that for certain yet, but there was a lot of good stuff going on in XCOM Enemy Within, so I'm really excited about it. And that, I think, was pretty much about everything we covered today. Obviously, there's a lot more videos coming. Bear in mind that it's taking a while to do this. My laptop has actually died. It's like, I've had it for 4 years. It's a venerable little beast. It was the Asus G73. It's cast so many tournaments. It's been to many different countries. It's been dropped on Swedish train platforms. It's happened. It's finally pretty much dead. I can't do anything with it. Jen's doing some editing of things like interviews right now. But a lot of the post-commentated stuff that I want to do, bearing in mind, pretty much all of the indie stuff, I do have like direct feed capture, and even some of the meteor stuff that you might be surprised by, I've got direct feed of, which is great. But a lot of the big AAA stuff, that's all of the post impressions over the B-reel, so that's going to take a little while to do. I've done some, like I've recorded my impressions of Wolfenstein and of Elder Scrolls, so there's stuff coming there. But like we're pulling like 8 to 6 days right now. So we'll do our best to get that going, but a lot of this stuff is going to be coming out when I come back, because I want to do this in-depth stuff. I know we could just do 2-minute videos, and you probably be okay with that, but I'm going to be honest, everyone else is doing 2-minute videos, and quite frankly, I'm going to do 15-minute videos, because I think you prefer that. I think if you want my impressions of a game that I've seen, you'd prefer more in-depth stuff, and you don't want me talking for 2 minutes about it. That's not what I do. It's never been what I do. You don't care about that. So I think that we can do a good job with it. We've got so much stuff to show you. It's going to be really exciting. And we've got one more day, so we'll see what else we can get. My name's been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching. Quick reminder, the Polaris podcast, as some people like to call it, which is not the name, the Co-optional podcast is currently available on the Polaris channel, youtube.com/Polaris. That was our live show, hour and a half of late night stuff from us in front of an audience. It was a good time. It was a terrible show, and hopefully you love it. I'll see you next time.